There's something we don't talk about enough when it comes to love. How easy it is to lose ourselves in the process. We enter relationships hoping to find connection, safety, meaning, but somewhere along the way we start trading little pieces of ourselves for approval. We compromise a belief here, silence a voice there, until we wake up one day wondering where we went. Before you love someone else, you have to know who you are. Not the version of you shaped by what others want, but the version that's built from purpose. Your why, that thing deep inside you that drives everything. If you don't know your why, then your identity becomes vulnerable. And in the wrong relationship, you'll slowly begin to orbit around someone else's world instead of standing in your own. Losing yourself doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small decisions. Saying yes when you mean no. Hiding parts of yourself to avoid conflict. Letting someone else's opinion drown out your inner voice. It's subtle, it's quiet, but over time it's devastating. The truth is, love without boundaries isn't love, it's dependency. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They're guides to help others love you properly. They tell people where you end and where you begin. And if you don't set those boundaries, someone else will do it for you. They'll decide what's okay and what's not. And the scary part, you'll go along with it thinking it's what love requires. But you don't need to disappear to be loved. You don't have to abandon your authenticity to gain affection. If someone only values you when you're pleasing them, that's not love. It's performance. And performing is exhausting. Real love sees you even when you're messy. Real love hears you even when your voice trembles. Real love invites you to grow, not shrink. Too many people equate being alone with being unloved. That's not true. Being alone can be the most honest thing you ever do. Because in solitude, you start to hear yourself again. You remember what you like, what you need, what you believe. And once you reconnect with that, you become unshakable. You stop settling, you stop begging, you start choosing. And that's what love should be. A choice, not a sacrifice of self, not a game of who can give up more. The right relationship won't ask you to dim your light. It will help you shine brighter. It won't compete with your growth, it will celebrate it. It won't erase your identity, it will support it. So if you've lost yourself before, it's okay. You're not broken. You just forgot. But now you have the chance to come home to yourself, to start again, to love without losing. And the moment you choose that path, the moment you choose yourself, you stop losing and start living. Before you can give yourself fully to another person, you need to understand who you are. It might sound simple, but most people skip this step. We rush into relationships because we crave connection, intimacy, and the feeling of being chosen. But when we haven't taken the time to define our own purpose, our own why, we end up molding ourselves into someone we think the other person wants. And when we do that, we start losing the very thing that makes us worth loving in the first place. Knowing your why isn't about having every detail of your life figured out. It's not about perfection or a flawless plan. It's about clarity. Clarity of what drives you, what matters to you, what principles you're unwilling to trade, even for love. Your why is the compass that helps you navigate everything, from your decisions to your relationships. Without that compass, it's dangerously easy to get lost in someone else's life, their goals, their needs, their version of the future. And you don't know your why, you tend to become reactive instead of intentional. You make choices based on what feels good in the moment rather than what aligns with your values. You start saying yes to things that don't sit right with you. You compromise your voice just to keep the peace. You become so focused on being chosen that you forget you have the right to choose too. We live in a world that often tells us our value comes from being wanted by someone else. But real value doesn't come from being wanted. It comes from being true to yourself. If you don't know your why, even the most passionate love can feel hollow. Because eventually you'll wake up and realize you've built a relationship on shaky ground. You've been performing, adapting, shifting, just to maintain connection. And it will hit you, you were never fully seen because you never fully showed up. Relationships built on authenticity are the only ones that last. When you know who you are and what you stand for, you attract the kind of love that aligns with that. You don't feel the need to chase or convince. You stop settling for someone who merely finds you convenient. Instead, you wait for someone who sees your purpose and says, I want to build with that. People often think knowing yourself as a luxury, something you can get around to later, but it's actually a responsibility, not just to yourself, but to the person you'll eventually love. Because if you don't know your purpose, your values, your non-negotiables, how can someone else love you in a way that respects them? Knowing your why is how you protect your peace. It's how you avoid pouring your whole self into relationships that don't serve your growth. It's how you set boundaries without guilt. It's how you stand in front of someone and say, I want to be with you, but I won't abandon myself to do it. Love is beautiful. Love is powerful. But without self-awareness, love can also become a place where we disappear. The most meaningful relationships are not built on finding someone to complete you. They're built on two people who are already whole, choosing to walk side by side. So before you give your heart to someone else, take the time to know your why. Because when you know who you are, you'll never again lose yourself trying to be who someone else wants. There's a misconception that setting boundaries means pushing people away, that it's cold, selfish, or even unloving. But in reality, boundaries are one of the most profound expressions of love, both for yourself and for the people you care about. Boundaries are not about building walls. They're about building clarity. They are the blueprint for self-respect. When you have no boundaries, you're constantly at the mercy of someone else's desires, moods, and expectations. You say yes when you want to say no. You stretch yourself thin to avoid disappointing others. You tolerate behavior that chips away at your peace just to keep someone close. And each time you do that, you lose a piece of yourself. It might not be noticeable at first. It might even feel like compromise, like sacrifice in the name of love. And over time, that quiet erosion of self adds up. You find yourself depleted, resentful, and confused, wondering how a relationship you care about became a place of exhaustion rather than support. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about communicating who you are. They say, this is what I need to feel safe, respected, and whole. They create the space where mutual respect can thrive. And here's the truth. Anyone who genuinely cares about you will honor your boundaries. Anyone who dismisses them, ignores them, or pushes against them is not protecting your well-being. They're protecting their access to you, even if it comes at your expense. You can't have real connection without honesty. And boundaries are a form of honesty. They require you to be clear with yourself first. What are your limits? What are your values? What behavior are you no longer willing to tolerate? When you know the answers to these questions, you stop negotiating your worth for the sake of harmony. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you love people less. It means you love yourself enough to stop abandoning yourself in the process. In fact, boundaries create healthier relationships. They prevent resentment. They foster accountability. They allow both people to show up more fully because they know where the lines are. There's safety in that. But here's the hardest part. People may not like it when you first start setting boundaries, especially if they benefited from you not having any. That discomfort is real. You might be called difficult. You might be told you're too sensitive, too demanding, too distant. But what you're actually doing is drawing a line in the sand and saying, I matter too. And the people who truly care will adjust. The ones who don't, we're only committed to your compliance, not your growth. Sometimes the fear of losing someone keeps us from enforcing our boundaries. But if keeping someone close requires losing yourself, it's not love, it's dependency. And dependency without self-respect isn't sustainable. Eventually, it cracks. You either lose them or lose yourself. And in the end, losing yourself is the greater tragedy. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They're declarations of value. They're how you teach people to treat you. They are not about making others comfortable. They are about honoring your needs, your time, your heart. They are how you protect your energy so that when you give, you're giving from a place of fullness, not obligation. When you start setting boundaries, you begin to rewrite the story. You start showing up as someone who doesn't just survive relationships, but thrives in them. You become someone who no longer begs for respect, but expects it because you finally decided to give it to yourself first. That is what real love looks like. And it begins with the courage to draw a line and stand behind it. It's easy to fall into the trap of wanting to be liked. We all want to be accepted, to feel chosen, to belong. But somewhere along the way, many of us begin to trade authenticity for approval. We start adjusting ourselves to fit the mold of what someone else wants. We downplay what we feel, we hide what we need, and we silence what we know to be true, all in the name of keeping the peace or preserving the relationship. But here's the hard truth. When you trade who you are for someone else's validation, you lose both. You lose the relationship with yourself and eventually the relationship with them too. Because real connection can't exist where authenticity has been sacrificed. If someone loves you for the version of you that you curate, you're not truly being loved. You're being accepted under conditions. And that kind of love is conditional, fragile, and exhausting. The most dangerous part is that this shift often happens gradually. You compromise once and tell yourself it's just a small thing. Then you do it again and again, until eventually you can't even remember what your truth looked like. You look in the mirror and see someone who feels distant from themselves. Someone who's more invested in being accepted than in being real. And it's not because you're weak. It's because you were never taught that you're allowed to be fully yourself and still be fully loved. We live in a world that constantly sells us the idea that we have to earn love by becoming what someone else wants. Social media, pop culture, even our own upbringing sometimes tell us that love is a performance. Smile more. Say less. Don't rock the boat. Be agreeable. Be attractive. Be convenient. But here's the truth. Being loved for a version of yourself that's not real will never satisfy you. It will only leave you feeling more alone, more disconnected, more unseen. Authenticity is not about being perfect. It's about being honest. It's about standing in your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Real love isn't about possession. It's not about holding someone so tightly that they forget how to breathe. True love is expansive. It creates space. It makes room for growth, for evolution, for becoming. But too often we fall into relationships that suffocate us in the name of closeness, where every step toward personal growth is seen as a threat, where ambition, independence, and individuality are viewed as distance rather than development. But love that's afraid of growth is not love. It's fear wearing the mask of affection. When two people come together, they're not meant to merge into one identity. They're meant to walk beside each other as two whole individuals, supporting, challenging, and encouraging each other to grow into the best version of themselves. T. That means change is not only allowed, it's expected. If a relationship demands that you stay exactly as you are, that you don't evolve, that you don't chase your dreams, speak your truth, or stretch beyond your comfort zone, then it's not love. It's control. Love should never feel like a cage. It should feel like a garden. It should be a place where you can plant seeds, try, fail, learn, and bloom without fear that your growth will scare someone away. The right person will not be intimidated by your evolution. They will cheer you on. They will celebrate your wins as if they were their own. They will see your growth not as a loss of connection, but as a deeper investment in the future you're building together. But too often, people stay small in relationships to keep the other person comfortable. They mute their goals. They shrink their voice. They delay their dreams just to maintain peace. But what kind of peace is that, really? Peace that costs your potential is just quiet destruction. You may not feel the damage right away, but over time it builds. It shows up as frustration, as restlessness, as resentment. But you are not meant to stop growing just because you're in love. If anything, love should give you the confidence to grow even more, to take bigger risks, to heal deeper wounds, to discover parts of yourself you hadn't even met yet. And the right partner will not only support that journey, they'll be on one of their own. Because growth is not one-sided. Healthy love is two people constantly learning, becoming, and pushing each other forward. And sometimes we confuse control for care. We think someone constantly checking on us, questioning us, or discouraging our ambitions is a sign of love. But real love doesn't clip your wings. It teaches you how to fly. It gives you room to stumble. It trusts your ability to rise. And when love is healthy, both people rise. Together, it takes strength to grow. And it takes even more strength to grow while staying connected. But it's possible. It's beautiful, and it's what real partnership looks like. Two people rooted in who they are, reaching toward who they're becoming, and holding space for each other every step of the way. So if you're in a relationship that makes you feel small, ask yourself, Are you being loved or are you being managed? Are you growing or are you just surviving? The answers will tell you everything you need to know. The love that lasts isn't the one that freezes you in place. It's the one that fuels your transformation. Because when someone truly loves you, they don't just want to keep you, they want to see you become everything you're meant to be. And they'll never ask you to dim your light just so they can shine brighter. There's a fear many people carry deep within them, the fear of being alone. We've been conditioned to believe that solitude equals lack, that if we're not in a relationship, something must be missing, that being alone means being unloved, unwanted, or left behind. But here's the truth. Alone doesn't mean empty. In fact, solitude can be one of the richest, most transformative experiences of your life if you let it be. The problem is, we often treat relationships like a solution to our inner emptiness. We look for someone else to fill the silence, to distract us from the parts of ourselves we haven't learned to sit with. But when you treat another person like a cure for your loneliness, the relationship becomes a crutch, not a connection. You begin to depend on their presence to feel whole, and the moment they pull away, even slightly, you feel like you're collapsing. That's not love. That's fear. That's anxiety wrapped in affection. And it's not sustainable. The healthiest relationships are not born from desperation. They're born from two people who are already at peace with themselves. Two people who know how to be alone without falling apart. Because here's what solitude does. It introduces you to you. It teaches you how to listen to your thoughts, how to understand your patterns, how to reconnect with the parts of yourself you've neglected. It gives you space to breathe, to dream, to ask deeper questions. Who am I when no one is watching? What do I truly value? What kind of love do I deserve? Being alone doesn't mean you're failing at love. Sometimes it means you're finally getting it right. It means you're refusing to settle. It means you're honoring your growth more than your fear of being by yourself. And that's strength. That's courage. That's maturity. We glorify companionship, but rarely do we celebrate the bravery it takes to be alone, to walk into a quiet room and feel full, to go through a weekend with your own company and not feel like something is missing, to sit with your thoughts and not run from them. That kind of peace doesn't come from another person, it comes from within. And once you find it, you stop chasing people who can't meet you there. You begin to attract different energy. You stop begging for love. You stop settling for someone just because they're available. You start waiting for someone who adds to your peace, not someone who replaces your loneliness with chaos. Solitude builds self-respect. It reminds you that your value doesn't decrease just because you're not in a relationship. It teaches you how to self-soothe, how to self-reflect, how to self-love. And once you learn how to be full on your own, relationships become a choice, not a need. You no longer tolerate people who drain you because you know what it feels like to be whole. Being alone doesn't mean no one wants you. It might mean you've stopped entertaining what isn't meant for you. It might mean you're in a season of becoming, and that season is sacred. Don't rush it. Don't try to skip past it just to feel temporarily validated. There is nothing empty about standing in your truth, learning your worth, and healing from the inside out. That's not weakness. That's power. So the next time you find yourself alone, don't see it as a punishment. See it as a gift. A space where transformation happens. A space where your voice gets louder, your vision gets clearer, and your heart gets stronger. Because when the right love comes, it will be the thing that completes you. It will be the thing that joins you. Whole meeting whole. That's where the magic really begins. Love at its core is not something that should require you to give up who you are. It's not supposed to feel like a surrender of self just to keep someone else happy. And yet, so many people enter relationships believing that the more they sacrifice, the more it proves their love. They give up their time, their voice, their dreams, and sometimes even their identity, all in the name of love. But here's the truth. Love is a choice, not a sacrifice of self. Love is something you choose every day from a place of freedom, not fear. It's not about giving up your identity. It's about bringing your whole self into the connection and inviting the other person to do the same. If you have to become someone else to be loved, then that love isn't real. It's a transaction, one where your worth is weighed against how much you're willing to give up. You are not meant to disappear in your relationship. You're meant to be seen, heard, valued. You're meant to grow alongside someone, not shrink to fit within their comfort zone. A healthy love won't ask you to dim your light so someone else can shine brighter. It won't demand that you abandon your needs to prove your loyalty. It won't treat your boundaries as problems or your opinions as threats. We've been told that love is sacrifice. And yes, love sometimes involves compromise, support, and putting someone else first in moments of need. But there's a huge difference between compromise and self-erasure. Compromise says, I care about you, and I'm willing to adjust without losing myself. Sacrifice of self says, I'll become whatever you need me to be, even if it means I no longer recognize myself. The danger of sacrificing yourself for love is that it sets a dangerous precedent. It teaches the other person that your needs are optional, that your identity is flexible, and that your boundaries are negotiable. And over time, this creates imbalance. You start to feel invisible. And nothing is more painful than being in a relationship where you no longer feel like yourself.